Hello and welcome to the Lion's Den. I'm your host Matt. As usual, there's no one else here but me. So, to begin with, this has been honestly a pretty slow week. Nothing much has really happened. But I suppose I'll go a little bit over what happened at the back end of last week, as well as some of the topics I've made notes on that I want to discuss this week. So hopefully you'll enjoy, but otherwise, let's get into it. So, last week, uni kind of took the sort of majority of my week. And that's mainly because I had a deadline at the end of the week for a couple of pieces of coursework, and honestly, they were quite daunting, quite heavy pieces to contend with. And myself personally, I've done quite well throughout most of my education. I'm one of those people that finds that it's quite easy for them to pick up work and learn it, understand it, and then reproduce and apply it. But last week I kind of hit my limit on that, and I didn't really handle it in the best way, but that just shows you that I still have a lot to learn personally. So the biggest problem was I didn't actually know how to continue the work I was doing. I was stuck nowhere near the required amount of work that I needed to do, and we're just kind of spinning my wheels. So the biggest advice I can give to you guys, as it was given to me, is to just ask for help. I sat and spun my wheels for a good couple of days when in reality what I should have done is just immediately gone and talked to the person that was overseeing the project and said, "Hey, I'm struggling, can you help me?" Which is what I did in the end, and it was honestly the best thing I could have done because it meant that I was actually able to then finish the work to a hopefully better standard and get it done and ready to go for the deadline. I did cut it kind of close, to be fair. If I had managed to realise that I was stuck and asked for help sooner, I could have perhaps produced a even better piece of work, but you live and learn. That was that. This week instead has been much slower, hardly any work really to do. There are a couple of things due tomorrow as I'm recording this, but they're all sorted now, which is good. I've also been doing coding this week, which I absolutely hate doing coding, but it is what it is, and I have a piece of functioning code, so that's a start. If it works, that's half the battle, I think, with coding. But yeah, hopefully that will be okay by next week when I'm diving into a whole new set of lectures and coursework and all of that joy. So I think one thing I should really touch on, because it's been kind of affecting me lately, and it's probably affecting a lot of people, is mental health. So when I was having that problem with the university work, my mental health honestly deteriorated quite a lot from what it had been normally. So people generally would say I'm quite bright, quite happy, quite positive, but I just found myself kind of sinking in and regressing, trying so hard to just not be with people, not do anything. I find that when I'm in a bad position, I get into this point where the only thing I can do is watch YouTube, oddly enough, because I feel guilty of doing things that I enjoy. I feel guilty playing guitar. I feel guilty playing video games or drawing or whatever I actually like doing. So to pass the time instead, I watch YouTube, which is a huge waste of time. So I think the best thing, an analogy I'll go with is when you're studying for a test, you might start at the beginning and think, oh, it's really hard. I can't do any of this work. And the easiest option is to just not do it. You don't study, you don't try, because then you don't have to face that failure. But the problem is, you then start to have a build-up of anxiety because you haven't studied for this test, and the days are passing, the weeks are passing, and you're getting closer and closer to the point where you have to perform, but you haven't done anything. And you get this kind of weird backwards logic that you have to study, you have to face that horrible feeling of failing, because if you study, you then get better with it, and eventually you get to the point where you're doing well, and then you won't feel the anxiety about the exam. And it's the same case here, that if you've got something that you're worried about, don't put it off, do it, because it's just the act of starting that will help produce a positive result. I think another thing that's important is scheduling. So the biggest thing for me, I find, is I wasn't doing any of my actual hobbies that I like. And that's a really bad thing. I found that I wasn't actually having time to sit down and play video games or to practice guitar. And that's really bad because it means that you're then losing those hobbies you really enjoyed doing. So one thing I did is I actually put into my calendar on my phone set periods of time where I don't do anything else except that one thing. So like I have an hour set out to practice guitar. Every other day I have an hour set out to play video games. I always try and make sure that my weekends are wide open so that I can do whatever I want. If I want to lounge around and be a lazy bum, I can. Definitely something you have to keep in mind. And you have to remember as well that the physical and mental side of your person are interlinked. So if you're not exercising, especially in this day and age, if you're not exercising, your mental health will drop dramatically, and vice versa. If you're only exercising and not looking after your mental health, then you're going to have problems on both sides. So I think another thing to be mindful of is, what is your go-to sort of pick-me-up? For me, it's either listening to music or playing rhythm games. It's something I can do. I can sit down for maybe 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes and really get deep into and absorbed into the topic. And it just brings me back up to a sort of base level of I'm okay. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm better and I can now start building myself up, because it's really hard getting out of that trench that you might find yourself in. So speaking of rhythm games, that's another big thing of my life. I've played a fair few rhythm games in my life, and I must say it's honestly becoming a bit of an obsession, because I'll often find different rhythm games and go, I want to play that, please. I like the fact that it's single player and non-competitive. Generally, there are online leaderboards I find sometimes with games, but you don't really have to pay attention to them if you don't want to. You can just kind of beat yourself and keep improving until you're proficient with the game. I think it often leans on electronic music a lot, so that is one thing you have to bear in mind. If electronic music isn't your jam, pardon the pun, then perhaps steer clear, or you will have to go digging for rhythm games that involve the kind of music you like. I also like this style of rhythm game that are easy to learn, so you can get the mechanics of how to play quite easily, but then the tracks become quite difficult to actually execute. I like that because it implements this idea of skill. Much like anything, painting is a skill, playing sports is a skill, learning subjects is a skill, so I enjoy that side of it. The biggest thing for me recently has been a game called Spin Rhythm. Possibly you've never heard of it, or you have and you love it or hate it. I think it is amazing, personally. The way it controls is just mind-boggling. When you first pick it up, you think, this is bizarre, I don't understand how this works at all. But as you start to build up confidence, you see how the mechanics really mesh well with the tracks that have been included. And that's another big thing, is don't play a rhythm game because you think it looks cool. Play a rhythm game because it has songs in it that you like. I find often I'll look through the track list, and if I don't recognise any of the songs, that might steer me off of it, unless I've played a demo of the game. If there's a demo of the rhythm game you're interested in, play it. Because that is how I often get hooked on rhythm games, is playing the demo. But the other thing I must say is, you might see, say, 2 or 3 songs that you do recognise out of a list of, I don't know, 30, 40 songs. And that still might be a good enough reason to buy it, because I often find that if you see tracks you don't recognise but you like the way the game plays, then you might end up enjoying the tracks because of the game. I often use rhythm games as a way to find new music, because half of the time I've never heard of half of the tracks in a game, but I'll play through all of them, or I'll just hear like a snippet of one of them as I'm selecting the song and go, right, that sounds good, let's try it. And I think that's really powerful because it just helps keep things fresh. So, oh yeah, I also want a turntable. If you look up Spin Rhythm on YouTube and then add in a turntable controller, you'll understand why, because it looks amazing. But yeah, that's probably going to about do it for us. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to my ramblings about mental health and rhythm games, because those two topics go together. But otherwise, I'll see you all next week. Bye!